we will move expeditiously in that regard and ask the Minister of Finance to give his brief overview, and then, of course, the question and answer can proceed. May it please you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I don't believe we should start in this way. I think the Bank of Jamaica, having been here from midday, we should apologize to them for the lateness in starting. Yes, no, I have to say so because I was on time. No, and I'm insisting on saying so, House Leader. We were told to be here from midday, and we've gathered here, and you are responsible for the quorum of this House. That is your role and responsibility. And for us to have the Bank of Jamaica people here, the governor, from midday, and we're starting 1 hour late, I think we should not have moved to the Minister of Finance without an appropriate apology, and not only to the Bank of Jamaica, but to also your colleagues on this side of the floor.
Madam Chair, the member is in order to make the comments that he has. I think he, having had experience in this craft, understands some of the issues that are involved. But the Minister of Finance was well positioned to make the necessary comments and appropriate apologies as we had determined. So I think it's a little premature for you to suggest that it should have been done ahead, because
in a unified manner, we made the central bank independent by an act passed in this parliament, and that act calls for the central bank governor to appear before the Standing Finance Committee at least twice a year. And so I'm going to recommend that, as from this experience, there should be just a standing date in the calendar twice a year to the people through the parliament. And we compromise that accountability framework if we aren't punctual and available on the dates when the central bank appears to engage with the central bank on the substance. So we apologize on behalf of the committee, and this will be a stepping stone, Madam Chair, for us to bring these proceedings to an even higher level with definite dates going, and better punctuality. Madam Chair, I will defer, or I will...
Jamaica Act. My remarks this afternoon will largely be focused on our recent policy decisions, as well as to update the committee on other relevant developments.
Governor, your volume seems a little low. I'm just going to also verify that the Parliament is able to record, and those who are listening from the outside are able to hear properly. Somehow your mic seems much lower than ours. I'm not so sure.
I think he's right, yeah.
It seems to be falling down. Mr. Taylor, it's on, so.
I try and speak up a little more then.
Okay. You could probably step it away a little bit, Mr. Taylor, so it can be elevated and not be in the governor's face at an uncomfortable place. Thanks.
Okay, is this any better? Over the past 3 years, Bank of Jamaica has tightened monetary policy by utilizing a three-pronged approach. Specifically, the bank has, 1, increased the policy rate by 650 basis points to 7%, which resulted in small increases in DTI's loan rates and moderate increases in their deposit rates. Secondly, we have tightened Jamaican dollar liquidity in the money market using our open market operations, which led to increases in private money market interest rates. And thirdly, we have utilized our foreign reserves to maintain relative stability in the foreign exchange market. This tight monetary policy stance was appropriate given that inflation had significantly increased from a low of 3.8% in April 2021 to a high of 11.8% at April 2022, and thereafter remained outside the target range of 4 to 6% for several months. The bank's policy actions were designed to reduce inflation by constraining domestic aggregate demand and minimizing the impact of imported inflation by inducing more stability in the foreign exchange market. The incoming data for inflation, inflation expectations, wage increases, and the balance of payments suggest that there has been significant success in the fight against high inflation in Jamaica. In this context, on the 20th of June 2024, Bank of Jamaica announced the Monetary Policy Committee's decision to start a gradual easing of its monetary policy stance. The first step involves gradually reducing Bank of Jamaica's absorption of liquidity from DTIs through open market operations, thereby facilitating A, the channeling of additional credit to the productive sector, and B, gradual reductions in money market interest rates. However, the MPC decided to maintain the policy rate at 7% data. The 12-month point-to-point inflation rate at June 2024 was 5.4%, slightly above the outturn for May 2024, but within the bank's inflation target of 4 to 6% for the fourth consecutive month. Core inflation has also trended down. This was below recent outturns. Another measure of core that excludes just the prices of agricultural food items and fuel prices was 4.6% at June 24, also below the outturn at May 2024 and that of June 2023. The Jamaican economy continued to grow over the first half of 2024, although moderating. Real GDP, as reported by Statin, grew by 1.4% for the March 2024 quarter and is estimated by the PIOJ to have continued to grow for the June 2024 quarter. For the December 23 quarter, the balance of payments recorded a current account surplus of US $256.4 million, or 1.3% of GDP, which was an increase relative to the surplus recorded for the December 2022 quarter. This increase in the surplus, which was primarily associated with a growth in tourism-related earnings, along with a positive outlook for the balance of payments over the next year, underpins the relatively strong flows in the foreign exchange market. Along with the actions taken by the bank, the strong flows into the economy has caused the foreign exchange market to remain relatively stable. Between September 2021 and July 2024, the average annual depreciation in our AML-CFT framework, Jamaica was removed from the enhanced monitoring list of the FATF during the June 2024 plenary. The program of work that led to this decision was carried out by a number of state agencies, coordinated by our prime contact, who is based at the Bank of Jamaica. Jamaica aims to continue improving our AML-CFT regime as we prepare for our fifth round mutual evaluation scheduled for June 2026. The declining trend in inflation that we have recently experienced is expected to be interrupted temporarily by the passage of Hurricane Beryl. As we know, the system affected a significant portion of Jamaica's agricultural infrastructure and supply, and will drive pricing decisions for selected starchy foods and vegetables over the next 2 to 3 months. The bank is still actively assessing this and other influences on the outlook of the CPI, but in the context of expected higher agricultural food prices, inflation may temporarily track above the bank's target range of 4 to 6% for 2 to 3 months in August. Inflation is, however, expected to return to the target range towards the end of the year as the agricultural sector rebounds and generally for inflation to remain within that corridor. Economic growth for financial year 2024-25 is also likely to be impaired by the impact of the storm on the agricultural sector and related sectors. Jamaica's gross international reserves, Bank of Jamaica received written confirmation from the Minister of Finance and the Public Service that the inflation target for Jamaica will be maintained at 4 to 6% for the next 3 years. The bank remains resolute in its commitment to seeing inflation firmly anchored in this target range. The MPC's decision on policy rate adjustments and other monetary policy actions in the near term will continue to be data dependent. In the meanwhile, the bank will maintain heightened surveillance of the risk to inflation. Thank you.
Change in that direction. And secondly, would you, even though you haven't said anything about the policy rate itself, was there an intention to start bringing the policy rate down?
Yeah, so the impact of Beryl is going to see agricultural prices rise. But there may be second round effects, meaning that agricultural prices rise, maybe wages want to rise too, maybe processed foods want to rise, maybe restaurants and so forth also rise. So there are second round effects that go beyond just the primary impact of Beryl on agricultural prices. And so that the MPC is going to look very carefully to see whether those secondary effects are so profound as to have an impact on the direction that we saw monetary policy going in. But to the extent that we have price increases that have, over which monetary policy has little impact, then of course the MPC will take that into account also. So in brief, the answer is, depending on how profound the impact is from Beryl, we'll make a decision as to whether we need to maintain a tight position to stop secondary round inflation percolating through the economy.
I want to pick up on the secondary effect that you have just spoken about. By your own acknowledgement, the transmission mechanism has been weak or limited in terms of the impact, and a significant part of the inflation that we experience is supply side imported. To what extent do you think the maintenance of the tight monetary policy is appropriate given those conditions and the fact that we don't have, I don't think we're in a position where we have excessive demand that is driving inflation at this point in time?
Ineffective. So we are addressing that issue. Another aspect of monetary policy has to do with the availability of liquidity. And to the extent that the bank has been mopping it up by issuing CDs at attractive rates, what that has done is tightened up the market a lot and made rates rise. So where the transmission system may have failed, the liquidity tightening has had an impact on interest rates. Also, it has helped with managing the foreign exchange market, because to the extent that Jamaican dollar rates are attractive vis-a-vis US dollar rates, to the extent that our rates, our policy rate is higher than the Fed's rate, it means that the migration of capital is limited. And so our monetary policy instrument of tightening liquidity, keeping our policy rate high, has helped with keeping the exchange rate within a limited corridor. So I think you have to look at monetary policy in its full complement of the three efforts rather than just one.
Two final questions, and then I'll leave it. Has there been any appreciable
Lending rate significantly, so if you had a loan with the bank prior to the policy rate being increased, chances are they have not disturbed that rate to you. I say chances are because there may be the odd case that they have. New loans coming on, perhaps the official outturn of the transmission system being ineffective. The other question you raised had to do with, yes, generally we find that inflation expectations have begun to trend down, and we have seen that in the last 3 or 4 surveys that we have done. They're not as low as we'd like it to be, but they are trending in the right direction. As our wage increases, they are also coming down.
I think because I was in...
Many months are still in that mindset. It means that if the other member does not ask your question, you have now fallen behind in the queue, because any other mic that turns on before yours will go next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm trying to understand, Governor, how you segment that basket to determine the inflation rate. I think I heard you mention that there is an inflation rate for food, which you can discern, which is separate from the basket, which includes transportation and other things. What is the inflation rate for food, just food items?
So recall, Statin is the one that does all of this. We just take the information from them. We don't do the surveys. We don't create the basket.
Right.
Nothing. They do all of that. But in our policies, we do look at agricultural or imported, like wheat and so forth, as well as energy, meaning these are items that we don't have any control over, really. So we are takers of prices in that respect. The other measure of core is to leave in imported prices but take out agricultural food prices. So wheat and that stuff stays in, but local agricultural stuff comes out, as well as energy. There are many different subtypes of inflation that we look at. Mr. Stennett would know more exactly what the food increase has been. So if you want him to answer on that, he can.
Yeah, the reason for my question is that I can cite constituents. Pensioners, for example, they stop paying rent. There are so much more on FOOD. And I think worldwide, we're seeing that as the main element of the reason for the upset, because people have to buy food. And I think it would be good if, in future, we could agree on those basic items for the poor, and perhaps...
Well, I think we are a little more transparent than even the Fed. Our last statement was pretty clear that we are very hopeful that but we want to do so cautiously.
Thank you.
I was trying to ensure I